Do you like movies and games also? Listen, so much more they all know. Vice, Pyro, Lotus, and friends, welcome to Corrective Consciousness.
Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 118, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I am your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And PyroJackFrost. I don't have a deep baritone voice this time.
Oh, it's gone.
I no longer hit puberty.
And he has a sweet, heavenly voice, like Urkel. And he appears every Tuesday and Thursday night, like Urkel. Actually, that was Friday, but anyway.
Yeah, it was Friday.
TGIF. Which they're bringing back, by the way. So, for this week, we wanted to kind of follow up our previous episode, recent episode of our visual novel by our take on visual novels and visual novels that we've liked, with the Japanese end of things, with the more westernized version of this kind of genre. So we are going to be talking about primarily point-and-click adventure games.
Yep.
From our favorite Western releases, and I'm also going to lump in games that are like the point-and-click genre. So I'm not going to discriminate from the Heavy Rain or anything like that, because that is the successor to the point-and-click. Let's just face it,
Yeah,
so
I mean,
we're not going to be super picky.
It's the same family.
Yeah, Heavy Rain is like, I mean, not so much necessarily with dialogue options being 100% of your story, but like, it's basically a Telltale game that you have to play with a controller instead of a mouse,
I mean, even Monkey Island had with the fourth game had a game that wasn't exactly point and click if you were playing it on the PS2. So
yeah.
I'm you know what we mean here. So Western adventure games. So I wanted to first kind of go over our history, our experience with the genre. Mine pretty much started out with Myst.
Yep, that's my first.
Day.
And probably my favorite series.
Yeah. You were way more into it than I was. It was kind of the game that we got with our PC, because it was the game you got with your PC back in the day. But I was fascinated by it, but not enough to continue at it. Let's just say that.
I think we talked about this 2 weeks ago a little bit.
Yeah, we did. But I did want to move on and say that my real interest in this series really came when I went to college and had my own laptop for the first time. So I started to explore more games that I never got a chance to put onto the family computer,
The Famicom?
That's what Famicom is, a portmanteau of family computer.
Yep.
Family computer, yeah. But no, so I actually had always had a fascination with the LucasArts games, because when I was growing up, I read a lot of video game magazines. I might have had a subscription to, I don't know, maybe 5 to 7 different magazines a month. I had a problem. But I used to have a ton of them, and they talked about these games, in greatest games of all time lists. Things like Day of the Tentacle would pop up, and the first 2 Monkey Island games, the third Monkey Island game, things like that. And I was fascinated by them, but you couldn't really find them in stores at the time. And this was before Steam. Steam was in its infancy. It had just been released when we went to college freshman year, and it was only used to basically deliver Half-Life 2. That was
Yep. I remember that.
And people were pissed about it because they didn't understand what it was slated to become, which is basically the iTunes of PC games. But so what I did was I actually found this was back in the day where not even Amazon had everything you wanted. It didn't have a marketplace where people could sell used things or anything like that. It was either eBay
it was
or
eBay.
nothing. there was eBay or nothing.
Well, there was kind of half.com, but that was a more niche kind of, like, it was more for books, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So I actually went to LucasArts' website, and lo and behold, you could print out an order form. This is how archaic it was. This was before the days of PayPal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You could print out an order form and then order their adventure games archives. And it came in like a LucasArts tin.
Tin?
Yeah, it came with a CD case that was it was metal. It was really neat, and they were disc only. It didn't come with any of like the the feelies or the instruction manuals, but it was neat. It came with almost all their classic games, and you could order almost all of them. So I actually ordered as many as I could.
Neat.
And yeah, they didn't have Full Throttle and some of the later releases. They didn't have.
Is that because they were licensed, or?
I don't know. I don't know what the deal was there, but maybe they didn't work on the systems at that time because this was before emulator. Classic PC emulators got really good. They were difficult to play even back then on laptops because this was before like Scum VM.
Gotcha.
Was a big thing, or like had even made a lot of progress. So that's the emulator that is even included in a lot of commercial versions of classic LucasArts games these days. Like if you play the original like Zack McCracken or Maniac Mansion from GOG, it'll include what's called the Scum VM front end, which is an emulator that allows you to play these games in particular.
Yeah, I mean it's basically like
systems.
a lot of classic games on GOG, and I mean like really old ones come with DOSBox, which is set to run the proper commands to run that game without you having to figure it out yourself. So if you buy a lot of GOG games, you're actually downloading DOSBox like 100 times. I mean, it is a tiny, tiny program, but still, yeah, you're doing that to make it convenient.
Yeah, and even some versions of Doom even come like that as well. So, but anyway, what was cool about this was that I got to experience the first Monkey Island game, and it was so cool. And I really fell in love with these kinds of games. But like on the other hand, the other big adventure game company, Sierra, really turned me off at the time because I was also getting into emulators. And I think I've told this story a couple times, but I played the Sega Master System version of King's Quest 1, and I walked directly into the moat and died, and I said, fuck this shit.
Yeah, here's the thing, like LucasArts...
I didn't realize it was supposed to be funny.
Yeah, I didn't really get into LucasArts games until later. I was the Sierra kid, because I don't even know how we got it. Maybe my dad bought it or something, but we had like King's Quest 5, and that was a game I tried for a little bit, didn't get very far in, thought it was interesting though, and King's Quest 5 was the first game in the series that was point and click, with voice acting and everything. But King's Quest 1, I mean, it must have been more like Maniac Mansion controls on the Sega Master System, but King's Quest 1 through 4 were... I mean, they were adventure games. You could see your characters and move around on the screen. In fact, I think King's Quest 1 was the first ever like adventure game where you could control a character on screen instead of typing things, like instead of literally the entire game being text. Like, this is not Zork, where it's like, you are standing in a field. What do you do? Like, in King's Quest, you could see the field, you could press left and right to move left and right. That was crazy at the time. But they also had text-based commands. So you'd walk up to a door and just bump into it. And then you'd have to break out the text parser and type, open door. And if you're standing near the door, the game will say, the door opens. And then you're in the next room. So there would be a lot of trouble with King's Quest where you would be like, jump up on the tree branch, and it'd be like, I do not understand, jump. Like, you have to get like the right commands.
Yeah,
so there's a lot
branch.
of that. But like, the first King's Quest game I think I beat was King's Quest 2, because I had it in like a little pack of like 3 or 4 games, and that was the only one I really got into. So to this day, I have never beaten King's Quest 1. I've beaten 2 and 4 through 7. But 2 was kind of my old King's Quest game that I grew up with, but it did have a lot of frustrating moments. Sierra did it first, but I have to admit that LucasArts did it better, because Sierra had a lot of situations in their games where you could make the situation, like the game, unwinnable and not even realize it until later. Like King's Quest V is pretty notorious for a particular part where there's a cat chasing a rat, and you're supposed to, if you have a shoe in your inventory, click the cat and throw the shoe at it. But it's moving fast, so like if you don't know it's coming, it will take you by surprise. And it's kind of hard to click on the cat anyway because it's moving fast, even if you do know what you're doing. And if you don't hit the cat, then the mouse or rat or whatever won't come save you by nibbling through your ropes when you get tied up in a mandatory sequence later. And like, you're not going to know that shit. So, and King's Quest 2 has stuff like that too, where like the bridge you cross to beat the game and get in the final dungeon, you're only allowed to cross it 7 times, which is exactly as many as you actually need to cross it. So if you cross it once to see what's on the other side and be like, oh, I'll have to come back later, you've already screwed yourself within 5 minutes of play, and you won't know it until like several hours later. It's a real dick move. But that said, the other game I really was familiar with from the adventure game, like from the old school days when I was a kid, was King's Quest VI, which I gotta say, despite being a Sierra game, it's one of the better adventure games in general of its time. The voice acting's way better, the visuals are better. There's, I think, only one unwinnable situation I'm aware of, but the game knows it and it telegraphs it for you, so it's kind of your fault if you go into it. The presentation's amazing, the music's amazing. It's like actually, it's basically what King's Quest should be, and it's arguably the best in the series of 8 games made by Sierra. There's been a King's Quest like reboot, or not even a reboot, but there's been a new King's Quest game released by a different studio, which I hear is amazing, but I have yet to play it.
Yeah, everybody says that the 6th one is the game to play, like if you want to start with the original series, because it has the most modern flourishes and best presentation, and you really don't lose much by not playing the others first.
Yeah, I mean, 5 is a classic. 5 introduced point-and-click to the series, but 6 is what made it really good. I will say 7 is not as good a game in general, but one thing that 7 did was make the pointer just click on something to do the thing you're supposed to do with it. Because King's Quest 6 still had click the walk icon and then click somewhere to walk.
Yeah,
click the touch icon
like,
and then click something to touch.
Maniac Mansion kind of.
Exactly. So like in King's Quest 6, click talk to talk to the person, whereas in King's Quest 7, click on a person, you'll talk to them. Click on an object, you'll pick it up. It's way more streamlined that way, but I still say that King's Quest 6 is the better game, like in general. The one click thing, though, I will say is a clear improvement on 7's part. Oh, and one little fun, I think, fact about King's Quest 2. Vice, I know we've talked about this before, and there are instances where the name might have come up elsewhere, but I believe that King's Quest 2 is the first game ever to have Dracula in it. Not a vampire, Dracula, which is kind of cool.
There might have been a text adventure with Dracula.
Yeah, I remember you told me there's something where, like, in the enemy list on the manual it says Dracula, but this was back when people called Frankenstein
Vampires,
the monster
Draculas.
And Dracula's vampire. Yeah, I was like, So that's a little tenuous, but I guess King's Quest 2 was the first game to clearly have Count Dracula as a character.
Gotcha.
Which is kind of rad.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved adventure games because I've always liked their wit.
Yes.
So like I've because like these games are usually made by like the biggest nerds on earth.
Yeah.
And I really have enjoyed the LucasArts games. I particularly like their design because LucasArts games and Telltale games are an extension of them essentially. They've taken their philosophy. Like you can't have an unwinnable situation. Your character can't die unless it's supposed to be funny.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention Monkey Island. There is one case where you can die, and it's a joke, and it should never happen. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. You are down like in at the bottom of the sea for an extended period of time,
that
like
part.
a very long period of time.
Yeah, well, like they establish in I think the manual or maybe the beginning of the game that one of your quirks is you can hold your breath underwater for 10 minutes. So if you break 10 minutes, then you'll die, and it's like, oh.
But the thing that you need to do takes like 30 seconds.
Yeah, you will
at
not
most.
accidentally have this happen. By the way, speaking of really funny way, I think you're going to get a kick out of this one. I actually don't think you know this. Sierra, in addition to making King's Quest, they made a bunch of Quest stuff. They made
Police
Space
Quest and
they
Space
played Police
Quest.
Quest.
Yeah.
Police Quest is fucking hard, by the way. Apparently, even actual cops have problems with that game because it's so by the book and nitpicky. Like, you actually have to do real police procedure. But, like, they also made Leisure Suit Larry, which has funny death situations. But they also made a pretty legit RPG series called Quest for Glory, which
I
has
knew
a
about
game
that.
plus across the series.
Yeah.
But there's one death sequence that's legitimately funny, because you could choose an entire character class, and your whole game will be completely different based on what class you choose. Like, fighter, thief, and, like, maybe some kind of magic user. But if you choose the thief... And you can upgrade individual skills, too. Like, the game's really involved for how old it is. But one of the things is great. If you can upgrade your lockpicking skills, which if you're a thief, you'll probably want to do, because there's lots of locks to pick, doors and chests. But the funny thing is, if you type in the text parser, like, pick your nose, if your lock-picking skill is really low, it says, like, you messed it up and, like, penetrated your brain and, like, killed yourself.
That's
like,
amazing.
It's freaking brilliant. It's like, if only you were better at picking or something. It's so good.
That's really good. How about you, Pyro? I know that most of your experiences in the Mist realm, and you've talked about them in the past. But do you have any others that you wanted to point out?
Yeah, actually, other than Mist, I really enjoy. Honestly, I know that a lot of the Telltale games are samey in the sense of the gameplay, but the Tales from the Borderland game I really, really enjoyed. Granted, I love Borderlands, like, in the world, but the humor in that game was, like, top notch. And
I really want to play that because of your recommendation.
I don't want to say I was laughing constantly throughout the whole thing, but I wanted to finish it. Whereas some of the games, I'm just like, okay, I'm finishing it because I need to, but now, like, I want to see what happens next.
And in that sense, by the way, what you were saying is, oh, maybe because I like Borderlands, I'm biased toward it. Like, it kind of makes me think of the Lego games, in that a lot of them, I mean, obviously there are improvements with each subsequent Lego game release. There are little aspects you can tell are better than the previous game, but the basic idea is very samey.
It's like the Warriors games,
I see it
too.
the way it is with Telltale games. Just pick the franchise you like.
Yes,
like,
definitely.
Like, same goes with the Warriors games. There's no way I'm playing every Warriors game, but I like Berserk. I like Fist of the North Star. I'll play those Warriors. It feels like that with Telltale as well.
If you pick the ones that with a series you like, then it won't seem samey if you don't feel like you get to play all of them. But definitely other than the Myst games, my favorite adventure game is probably Grim Fandango.
Yeah, I was going to mention that one. That one is
I've beaten
brilliant.
That several times. Because it's like, it's really, the humor is great, and I think the story is really good too.
It is.
And everything
apparently
that connects.
It was based on an actual story.
Oh, really?
I mean, not a true story, but like a
true
book
tale
or something.
kind of thing.
Yeah. Like, I think it was based on, like, an actual, like, noir, I forgot, book or movie or something, but apparently it's kind of like, the movie Airplane was actually a direct parody of a particular movie, not just disaster movies. Like, the Grim Fandango is not one for one, but it's got allusions to some source material that I forgot what it was called.
But yeah, so Grim Fandango is definitely one of my favorite adventure games. Even though, granted, the controls in the original version were kind of shitty, like the tank controls and
it was not a point and click.
I played the remake for the Vita and PC, and they definitely improved upon it with new controls.
You know what's kind of funny though? There's an achievement for only using the tank controls.
Yes, there is.
Like, playing the game the way it was, like, meant to be played, even though the
Quote
point
unquote.
and click is, like, definitely better. That's another thing about point and click I actually neglected to mention, by the way, when you're actually using a mouse or something, is that this is another thing that's been improved from King's Quest 5 and 6. Like, King's Quest 7 showed this improvement, and now a lot of games do. Older games used to be, like, pixel hunting.
Yes.
Especially before
so
you had a
obnoxious.
mouse. In King's Quest 1 through 4, sometimes it was literally pixel hunting. And in 5 and 6, like, you click on something and see what happens, but you might misclick, like, you weren't quite right where you should be. With King's Quest 7, your mouse pointer is a little magic wand looking thing, but if it highlights something that it can do something with, and the wand sparkles. So, like, Grim Fandango does that as well. The icon changes a little bit in the remaster if you highlight something that you can actually click on. So, I gotta say, that's a very welcome improvement to point and clicks in general, because with the old point and clicks, you would just keep clicking on shit until something happens. And in King's Quest, one of the actual recommended strategies for solving puzzles was take everything you have in your inventory and click it on the thing and see what works.
Yep.
And like, that's, I mean, some people miss that because just the brute force way of figuring things out, but like that doesn't make for if that kind of game were released today, I don't think it would be received very well
People would
because
enjoy
we've
it,
done
yeah.
we've evolved past that point, you know.
Yeah, and another game that I've been playing, that I played, I never beat, but I thought it was really fun. Idea was The Cave, which I think you can consider an adventure game.
Oh, that's Double Fine, right?
Yeah,
definitely. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then-
you have the right
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, and it's like I really thought it was cool because you picked 3 characters and they each had abilities and certain. I think I did beat it, but it took me a while just because it was a fun idea, but I didn't necessarily think it was that great of a game. And then I'm currently playing Read Only Memories, which
Nice.
is kind of like what was that game?
Snatcher, right?
Snatcher, yeah. It has. It's not entirely the same. It's not about androids killing people, but
No, but
it's a
very
similar
much has the
cyberpunk
aesthetic.
kind of idea. So
Yeah. And there's also I don't know if you've tried it, but there's also Valhalla. It's not spelled that way. It's got like ones and at
Oh,
signs
I've
or something.
heard
but
of it.
like it's
I've heard
when
of
you're like a bartender. I don't know how it plays, but the reason I bring it up is that it's apparently in the same universe as Read Only Memories.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've been wanting to play Read Only Memories. That's on my list. Apparently, that's more of like a Snatcher style adventure game.
Mhm.
Yeah,
like a Japanese style.
It's really just a bunch of text and you choosing some options every now and then. It's like
Yeah.
Telltale games too, you could say.
Yeah, yeah.
I did want to point out a couple others that I really enjoyed. So before Telltale really brought the genre back, there were very few games in this genre being released. But there was one in particular that I really enjoyed during this time period. You guys might know about it. It's part of the Dreamweb series, I believe it's called, or it's called The Longest Journey.
I've heard of it.
good
Yep.
things, but I haven't tried it.
Yeah, so I know that's not the name of that series. I can't.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Now, Dreamfall series. I'm sorry.
Dreamfall, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are 3 games in that series.
The
And
third one's new, isn't it? Pretty new.
yeah, it's very new. In fact, I think there was Longest Journey, then there was Dreamfall, The Longest Journey, and then there was the Dreamfall chapters, which is recent.
Yeah, they came out in installments.
So yeah, I really enjoyed the first one. The first one was a point and click adventure game and had a female protagonist in it, which was kind of unusual for the point and click adventure series or genre, for the most part. And she was very witty, and I really liked it. It had a really cool setting too. It was like a kind of like, it wasn't a cyberpunk future. It was more like a futuristic steampunk future. And by that I mean, cyberpunk usually has a noir tint to it, so it's not really appropriate to call it cyberpunk because it's not depressing. It's futuristic. There are problems, but there's some optimism to it. So it's not quite cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is always at night, just like noir films. You know what I mean? Like
or if it is day, then it's dark.
Yeah, it's foggy or something, or raining,
or just dimly lit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's noir, but in the future. Whereas Longest Journey more had like a futuristic, like it had like almost like Art Deco architecture mixed with technology and things like that. So it was really cool, and it was also universe spanning. It went from dimension to dimension. It was a cool series, and it also had a Surge advertisement in it. An advertisement
Really?
for that the soda Surge in it.
Surge still exists.
Yeah, it was so funny. But I really enjoyed it. Dreamfall was different. It was a third-person adventure game, so it was very much like Grim Fandango in that regard.
And
Yeah,
Mr.
most point and
Uru.
clicks are first person.
Well, and Uru, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But a lot of people played this on the original Xbox,
Yep.
Dreamfall, and so that it was a popular one. And I'm glad that it kind of it blossomed into like a larger series, because the first one was quite fun. I never got through it, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
By
So,
the way, just before changing gears real quick, just to mention that you had said that a female protagonist was uncommon at the time for point and clicks. Again, this isn't quite...
King's Quest had one.
Well, King's Quest 7,
yeah.
but like, just want to throw this out there. Even though it predates point and click, like King's Quest is like the first adventure game. So King's Quest 4, The Perils of Rosella, was the first ever video game to have a female protagonist.
Yeah, I was gonna say I know that there are some because the Quest those games were made by a female writer, so
Yeah, like a few. Like Roberta Williams and Jane
Roberta
Jensen are probably the
Williams.
most famous names behind them.
Yeah. So it wasn't entirely unfounded, but like her type of character was unusual. I guess I would say she was very independent. She was just like her own. It wasn't like a rescue the guy kind of thing. It was
Sure.
So it was a very strong female protagonist in a time where that didn't typically pop up. So it kind of reminded me of the protagonist of
Beyond Good and Evil?
Beyond Good and Evil, exactly. Yeah,
'Cause
that's
when
actually
you
what I was
mentioned
going
that,
to.
like that, a lot of what you were saying sounded kind of like Beyond Good and
Like
Evil,
Jade.
except that Beyond Good and Evil is not a point and click style adventure game, but like it definitely sounded kind of like that.
No, you are right on.
Yeah,
and
Jade, she was freaking cool.
Yeah, and it was around the same time period, I would say. So what else? There
Machinarium are some pretty good games too.
Yeah,
That full series.
It was Botanicula was the second
Yep.
one, right? And there's
I
a
didn't know it
third
was in the
one, I
same
think.
series.
Yep. And there's a new one too, if I forget what it's called, that I beat recently.
Yeah, I got really mad at this game because when I tried to play it, Machinarium, I really enjoyed it, but it was still running on Adobe Flash, I think.
Oh.
And it was right in between when they hadn't updated it, and it was just getting to the point where basically PCs weren't supporting Flash anymore.
Gotcha.
Really. So it started glitching out, and I got into an unwinnable situation that I was supposed to be able to win.
That sucks.
Like I wasn't doing anything wrong. I just couldn't do it because it wasn't functioning properly.
Mm-hmm.
But really cool art style. I definitely recommend it. And what I really liked about Machinarium in particular was that you really are only dealing with one screen at a time.
Yeah.
So you know that you have to do something in this space.
That's useful, because a lot of games didn't have that. It was like, go find it.
Yeah, most point-and-click adventures had a problem in that you didn't know where... You knew you had to do something somewhere, but you didn't know whether you had to do it yet.
Yeah.
You didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, like, on one hand, it was cool for foreshadowing, because you're like, oh, I know I'll be back here later. But when it gets to a point where you don't know what to do, there are like 4 different locations you could be going to. Like, how am I supposed to know which one? And again, especially with the King's Quest games, because some of them really have what they call moon logic. So good luck figuring out which item to click. Like, put the cheese into put the moldy cheese into the machine that can extract power from magic wands. Like, how the hell would you figure that out? Like, you literally have to just brute force it to find out. Oh, by the way, one other point and click I'd like to mention, which is an indie title. It was made by 2 people, but it's like a really high quality product. Is Fran Bow. You guys remember that one?
Yes, I remember you Let's Played that, right?
Yeah, I did. Let's play that, but that's a really brilliant game that goes like it definitely has very dark themes and it can have some disturbing imagery at some points, but the art style is gorgeous and like the game is bigger than you might expect for being made by two people. Like one person did the art, like one person did the music, but it really comes together very well. And it's another one of those games where you like the mouse knows what to do when you click on something.
Mm.
But there might be the matter of using inventory stuff, and it's a really compelling story that goes into kind of like Silent Hill Otherworld territory. Like the big gimmick of that game is you can flash in and out of like the normal world and the creepy world. So you might have to do things in the creepy world that allow you to do other things in the regular world, or vice versa. It's kind of like this is a bit. This is not the most obscure reference, but it's kind of like Silent Hill Origins. It's kind of like that, where you actually go in and out of the other world to like maybe the door is unlocked in this world. So it works kind of like that, and it makes for an interesting experience because the game is kind of twice as big as it looks.
Yeah. I also wanted to mention here, have you guys heard of Been There, Dan That, and Time Gentlemen Please?
I think I've heard of them.
I have not.
So those are very early indie games. The first one is called Been There, Dan That, and it is very obviously an indie game. Time Gentlemen Please is the second game in the series, but it's very very clearly inspired by Day of the Tentacle. It is like a time, like it has a time mechanic. But the first one was a free game that was released, by an indie dev. You could still get it for free on Steam, I believe, and the second one is the one that you have to buy. But it's cool. It has a very it's definitely made by British people, so it definitely has British type humor, and it even makes specific references to things that happened in Monkey Island.
Oh, really?
Oh wow.
Yeah, this was a series that I played early on when Steam first started selling third-party games. It's very, very fun, and neither of them take very long to beat. And so like the writing is clever, and the game is fun, and it's not too hard. So it's really about the experience of playing the games. So they're not too frustrating. So definitely check those out because it was released in 2009, so quite a bit of time has passed since then. So a lot of people don't talk about them anymore. They used to be kind of like the indie darling of that era, but time has moved on. So like a lot of people don't look back on it. Definitely, Kurt Collada has very high praise for this in his adventure book, which I absolutely recommend if you are interested in adventure games at all. He made a telephone book size book.
Yeah, it's his first book, I believe, and it's freaking huge.
It basically details every notable adventure game up until that point in which it was written.
Yeah, that was when like Gemini Rue, I think, was one of the newest games to mention.
Yeah, but I think he basically mentions every game that he knew of.
Yeah, there are very few that I can think of that didn't make the book. Like very, very few, but that's because no one knows what they are.
Exactly.
Oh.
So I definitely recommend that as a point where you could read reviews and poke around and try to find something you might like, especially in the classic realm.
By the way, one other point and click series I'd like to mention, which you guys might know about, but this is especially for Pyro's benefit. Have you ever tried out the Discworld point and click series?
I actually started playing the first one, and it was actually really hard to play because it was a typical point and click adventure where
I've heard it's
you had
particularly
no
difficult.
idea what to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to play it because obviously, for those of you who didn't know, I'm a huge into Discworld, but no, I never actually got that far in it.
Yeah, there's only really one thing I know about the game, other than it's voiced by the main guy is voiced by Eric Idle from Monty Python, like saying them all, like that guy. There's apparently a puzzle in the game, which is a nod to one of the books where you know how whenever in the movies when they say like, oh my god, we're never gonna get this, the odds are 1,000,000 to 1, and they always manage to succeed.
Yeah.
There's a puzzle in the game where like you can calculate your odds of success of getting past some obstacle, and you need to keep like your odds are not very good, so you need to keep lowering the odds until it's 1 in a million. So like your odds are currently 10 in a million. You're like, nope, and you like got to bring it down to 1, which is kind of fantastic because that's like a guaranteed success.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
That series is pretty cool. The first one, I believe, is a long box game on the PlayStation 1. I think they were both. There are 3 of them, right?
Yeah, there was 1, 2.
I
and
know of
Noir.
at least two of them. I know the first one in Noir. I didn't know there was another one.
Yeah,
I
so
believe
there are
there's
2.
just a straight up Discworld 2.
There are 2
Okay.
Rincewind. There were 2 Rincewind games, and then the Noir themed
Yeah,
one.
Noir was like PC only, I think.
Gotcha.
No, there is a PlayStation version of that, but only in Europe.
Okay.
In fact, that is the way to play it, because there's no way that you're getting the PC version to run on a PC
modern
without
system.
extensive modification.
Yeah.
So, any other major ones that anybody wants to shout out before we move on to our weekly topics?
No, I think that covered all the ones that I know about, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only things I'd mention real quick is we quickly alluded to like Heavy Rain and like the David Cage style stuff. I know we mentioned this just last week with the horror games, but one more shout out to Until Dawn, because that game's so good at what it does. It really is.
Especially with Halloween coming, it is a good game to play like with a significant other or something like that, because it's like playing a movie and it's fun.
Yeah, and one other thing I see in the show notes that we didn't quite get to was like FMV games are kind of making a little bit of a comeback, especially because now it's in HD, so FMV doesn't look like compressed, garbled like mess. But Vice
Contradiction.
and I, we had played Contradiction, which is I believe Steam exclusive. That game is freaking great. So
it was an iOS game first, I think.
Oh, was it? No kidding. So
I heard it was really good.
It is.
It's awesome.
You're a detective trying to solve a murder mystery. And so you're going to all sorts of locations and asking people different questions. And the gimmick of the game is as conversations progress, you'll get little notes of what these people said. And to make like a big aha moment and move on through the story, you have to take 2 things that they said which contradict each other. And it's usually not obvious. You're going to have to do some hacking away to find some of the stuff. But when you point out a contradiction, they're like, oh no, well then I guess I feel more this way than that, and you can move on from there. It's just really entertaining because my favorite actors in the game are the guy you play as, and the 2 guys
fantastic.
who are closest to villains in that game. Like, yeah, your main character Jenks is amazing. He always has something like he has like a way of speaking. Like he'll show you an inventory item, or to the person he's talking to.
He has a flourish to him, kind of
like if I were to show you this,
almost like David Caruso in like CIS Miami or something. Like he just has like a bravado about him.
But what's funny about it though is you might not notice it in any individual case. But like if I like he'll do like the devil horn sign with the hands, like you're at like a Dio concert or something. Like he'll be like, if I were to do this, how would you react? But the funny thing is like, you asked that to like 100 people, so you keep hearing him say that, and it's super entertaining because like he just keeps fucking doing that. And the guys that come closest to being villains are also fun because they get to be like deliciously evil. Like the guy who looks like the bad guy is always just holding this drink of scotch, and he has this like slimy way of talking. And his father, who does not respect him at all, that guy is like legitimately intimidating when he feels like being. But I still, like, the disdain he has for his son is freaking brutal. Like, there's one part where there was, like, the son had mentioned that he, like, he dabbles in various hobbies, and he'd recently been taking up guitar. And when he asked the dad about this, he's like, playing the guitar? He couldn't get a tune out of a radio. And you're just like, Jesus Christ, dude. It's like, what a line. I love that.
It is definitely a game worth even watching, like
Yes.
LPing, like watching an LP of, because it is just a fun experience,
You
because
just watch the mystery unfold.
the acting is a lot of fun.
It is.
And
And
it's a fun game.
yeah.
It really is good. It was actually one of my favorite games we ever played together. It was
Oh,
it was
wow.
that good. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We didn't LP that one. We didn't record it, did we? We
No,
just played
I mean,
it, right?
No, we just played it. But I mean, it's a lot of fun just to try solving, and again, just to watch the acting. Like, Jenks is goofy enough that, like, the game is aware of it, and, like, occasionally when you call the police station, because you're way out in, like, some rural town, if you ever call back to the police station, they'll occasionally give you, like, a little bit of light ribbing, and it's just, like, pretty amusing. Like, just even the game is like, yeah, we know. It's great.
So, yeah, we would like to move on to, our weeklies here. As much as I like to, there are countless games, so we could even go on the Tex Murphys and all that stuff, and all other games like this. But we can even go on to the Seduction Artist, or whatever that game is.
Oh yeah,
God.
the legitimately creepy and uncomfortable
fuck that
game
game.
to watch.
Yeah, but anyway, so we'll move on here. We'll do Vize's weigh in. So I've been falling off a little bit here. I'm back at 255 here. I need to get back on the saddle. I drank a bunch of Coke this week, and
That'll do it.
I don't drink soda. I trained myself not to drink soda from when I was younger, and I had a few nights where I just really wanted Coke. So I don't want to get in the habit of drinking it regularly in the slightest. I even ordered it when we went to go get Chinese food. So
Yeah.
I need to get back on my plan, and that is the reason why I keep doing this. So this will keep reminding me to take care of myself, because it's difficult for me, and I'll be the first to admit. So hopefully, with myself nagging me publicly, I can get back on the saddle here. So we can move on to reactions. Lotus, if you could take it away.
Sure. So we have just two. So Living Corpse X had a couple of comments. This one is from back when we were talking about our greatest gaming accomplishments. They say, I forgot to mention, I beat the invisible enemy mode on hard for Resident Evil Remake with Jill and Chris. That is fucking hard.
Wow.
I only did that personally, I only did that on easy, because you don't get anything, like, you get something for beating it on any difficulty, so normal and hard are just for swag, so I just took the easy way out, literally. And he says, I also forgot to mention, I beat Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee on hard, with all monsters invisible and the HUD turned off. I never played that game, but that just sounds hard.
Yes.
So I will take your word on that being quite the accomplishment. Dracologist was talking about, this is our most recent podcast, the overlooked and possibly underrated horror gems. So he says Sanitarium. That's a good point, and that falls right into the point and click game as well. Sanitarium is apparently a quality, not horror, but like creepy kind of point and click, which is available on GOG, by the way. Carrier, that's a Dreamcast game. The Suffering, Ties That Bind. Good call. There are two The Suffering games, and I hear they're quite good. They're on PS2 and PC. For indie, White Chamber and Grey Tower. I don't know those. Goetia, like Goetia. Was that the... I forgot if Kurt talked about that one.
No.
Waiting for Scorn. I don't know that one. Also, Five Nights at Freddy's is an honorable mention. He says, shit game, but the ARG is mental. It's so well done. This is my own shortcoming here. What do you know what ARG is?
Augmented reality game.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. Yeah, that is true. Like the lore runs deep in Five Nights at Freddy's. Not my kind of game at all, but like ultra respective storytelling.
It is the kind of series that I don't want to play, but I love watching the videos of.
Okay, yeah. Also, Chozo Mythos, or Chizo, CHZO. You know, that's those. I think those are the games made by Yahtzee, the zero punctuation guy. I hear they're quite good. Swapper.
Yeah, that's a Metroidvania.
Yeah, The Fall.
Another Metroidvania.
Okay.
There are two of those. Yep.
And the Flash game Breach. And he says, if you want good Flash game, escape the room games. Everything by Mateus Skutnik. I don't know that one. Like RPG Maker games wise. There's IB, Ao-Oni, Witch's House. And there was no... And he's saying there was a strange point-and-click adventure game called Entombed with an actual 3-life mechanic. How strange. Huh. Speaking of creepy point-and-clicks, I think there was also, again by Sierra, like Shivers. I believe there were 2 of those games. And
I heard of that. That sounds familiar to me.
The first one made it to GOG, and that's like actually kind of a big deal. So look into that if you're interested.
What game is it? I'm sorry.
Shivers.
I should look into that. Okay.
Yeah, and even Phantasmagoria 1 and 2 were creepy point-and-clicks. Phantasmagoria 2 got a little bit silly. 1 had cheesy voice acting, but was, I think, the creepier game. But both of those, I think, were Sierra. Certainly the first one.
Yeah, they were both made by Roberta Williams as well.
Okay. Yeah, and 2...
I think they're famously have like 1 billion discs. Like there's something like
really?
seven discs for the PS1 version of Phantasmagoria in Japan.
I didn't even know that was on the PS1.
Only in Japan, but I think it holds the records for the most amount of discs for a console.
Well, FMV
game.
like movies do take up a lot of disc space.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I have Juggernaut on the PS1, and that's like 4 discs. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think that one, Riven might be the biggest one in the U.S.
Riven is fucking huge. Like even on PC, it's like 1,000 discs. It's like 6 or 7 or something.
The funniest one to me was Lost Odyssey though.
Oh, it's like 3 360 discs or
it's
4.
4. It's 4 360 DVDs. Yeah.
That's insane. But anyway, yeah, those are the reactions. As for our question, this is again by the cat at Jaina. If you could live in any game world, or excuse me, I said that wrong. If you could live in any world, game, movie, comics, whatever, what would you pick?
Dark Souls.
Yeah, perfect. all the true horror is done. I'm just in a dying world and I wait to die. It's fine. No, I mean, honestly, I think I've said something like this before, but I would choose the most boring world because like I don't want to live in a world where I can walk outside in a fucking dragon like even the world of Pokemon, like in Pokemon they seem to have that world under control, but it's like every animal is terrifying, so it's like no thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like my obvious answer would be either the Transformers universe because it'd be cool if that actually existed, or their Persona universe. Although I probably
which Transformers universe? Huh?
The
Beast Wars, obviously.
The comics one.
Okay.
Or Bumblebee, I will say, because whether or not that's the same universe as the Transformers movie, tangent. I watched Venom over the weekend.
Oh, how was it?
It was good, and one of the trailers was for Bumblebee. So my favorite, at least Decepticon, is Soundwave, who's the team reporter.
He's cool as hell. Yeah.
And so in that movie, they all look like their Generation 1 version, so they all look like the cartoon versions. And then in one scene, I saw Soundwave, and he pressed the button on his chest, and a cassette popped out and transformed, and I actually almost cried. Like I choked
like Ravage.
Happy.
Yeah,
I remember
Ravage
like the dog. I remember I didn't have many Transformer toys when I was a kid, but I always kind of wanted Soundwave just for the transforming tapes. Like that was just such a cool little thing. Oh, he didn't talk, did he? Did he still have like that Soundwave voice?
Yes, that's how he. I mean, he didn't talk in the trailer, but anyway. Yeah. And anyway, the Transformers universe is not much different than ours, other than there's cars that transform. But same with like the Mega 10 universe, or I should say Persona universe, even though I'd probably just be a normal person who had no special powers, but it'd just be cool if that actually existed. But again, I like just how what Lotus said, I wouldn't want to be in a universe where it's actually deadly.
No, you know why you want to be in a Persona universe? Because whenever you go to a restaurant, they would give you probably the coolest, snazziest menu.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So my choice is going to be a little unconventional. I mean, it's a video game, but also it's based off of something else. But it's still cool. I would love to be in the Disney Duck universe. Hear out my rationale for this, like the Scrooge McDuck universe.
Yeah, I know
Oh,
what you
or
mean.
Darkwing Duck
I
universe.
actually thought you meant Mighty Ducks.
No. Not like the Mighty Ducks cartoon, which is I think what you're referring to.
Well, even just live action movies, it's just basically the real world.
Oh, just Emilio Estevez all the time. No. What I'm talking about is the DuckTales universe, essentially, and Darkwing Duck universe by extension. I love those universes, like in the comics and in the cartoons. I was a big Darkwing Duck fan and DuckTales fan when I was a kid, and I also got to read some of the Carl Barks comics. And I also love the Capcom video games from when we were kids.
Yeah,
and
they were pretty good.
Released on the Saturday, or on the Disney Afternoon bundle recently. The reason why I say I would love that is because they're full of adventure, and there is danger, but not like really super.
Ending, like it's
more mischief. It's not anything where you're going to die.
That's
you know
the
what
thing.
I mean?
Yeah, even when ghosts come out, they're like the Scooby-Doo, like a booga booga kind of ghosts. They're not gonna like murder you.
Yeah, so like it would just be fun to go on adventures. In other words, like I loved one of my favorite games growing up was Quackshot, which is a game starring Donald Duck. I love that game too. That one is made by Sega, but it also has the nephews in it. It has Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and Goofy in it. I love that Duck universe, and I think it's so much fun. Anything with those characters in it is a lot of fun, and most of their games are good. I mean, the 3 Capcom DuckTales games. You have also
what was the third?
The remastered.
Oh, okay, okay.
1, 2, and remastered.
Yeah.
And like I would consider it a new game by a lot of because there's a lot of extra stuff they added.
The remaster has voice acting from the original actors, which is insane.
Really cool. And I love Darkwing Duck, and I love the Darkwing Duck video game. It's basically Mega Man, but
That's a fun game. Yeah.
It's a fun game. And I like Tailspin quite a bit too. So if you count that as part of it, so
Tailspin really threw me off because it has Baloo and Shere Khan from the Jungle Book movie.
Yeah.
Except that they're not called Baloo and Shere Khan. It's just like, whoa.
No, he's called Baloo in it, and Shere Khan. No, they're called that.
No, I don't know about Baloo, but wasn't Shere Khan Don Carnage, or is that the fox?
Don Carnage is the air pirate.
Okay.
Shere Khan is Shere Khan. He's a businessman in it.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
So they're just
King Louie's in it as well. He's an owner of a bar.
Oh, I never knew that. That's amazing.
Yeah. So he's Baloo's friend in it. Even though he's kind of one of the antagonists of the Jungle Book, anyway.
He doesn't really have much to do with Baloo. He's more just trying to like get something out of Mowgli for like selfish reasons. So he's not a villain, but it's like let's just not deal with that situation.
He's a trickster. He's not good or bad. He's just chaotic. So anyway, that's my choice here. So I think that'll call it for this week, unless anybody else has anything to add.
Nope.
Again, shout out to the Baroque universe. Gotta live in that.
I would not want to ever. I would not want to live in the proper SMT universe either. Fuck that.
Definitely not. Because the world is destroyed, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, shout out to living in the pre-Nier post-Drakengard 1 universe.
No, fuck that too.
No, like from what you get of Nier and from what more you get from online research, it is like a calamity and a half before the events of Nier. It is like the Berserk Eclipse scene in Drakengard was bad, but then it ended. Like the between game stuff that you don't see is apparently the real problem.
Ugh. Yeah, I don't. No post-apocalyptic games, and that includes a lot of the shit we're talking about. Hollow Knight, no, don't want to live there.
Fragile Dreams,
no, don't want to live there. Nothing where everything's already dead.
Yeah.
or shit's
Yep.
going down. So that's the show for this week. We want to thank our fans who contributed questions. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own via the YouTube and SoundCloud pages. Also, give us some more reactions. We need a little bit more going on here. While there, give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays on our sister podcast, Reactive Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Battle.net, and Switch. I
And
said
you
it
can
right.
Hey! You can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you're interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, like Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth, which I'm doing right now, or even getting in on a Discord server with me and other patrons, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And you can find me as PyroJackFrost or Cloudoid540 on Steam, Battle.net, or Xbox Live. What am I missing?
Steam.
Anything, basically.
Whatever you're on.
All right. We'll catch everybody on Tuesday for another episode of Reactive Consciousness. We'll catch you then.
Peace.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.